Councillor Saad Al-Mawa, WPTU, Chairman of the Race Relations and Equal Opportunities Committee, Birmingham City Council.
वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। सिख चैनल के प्यारे दर्शकों, सिख चैनल वालों आप जी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। सरदूल सिंह मालवा वालों आप जी ने जी आया। वीकली पोलिटिकल शो सिक्स एंड पॉलिटिक्स, उस शो दे विच फिर आप दे सामने हाजिर होए हैं। आप जी ने पता ही है कि असीं उन्हां टॉपिकां दे विच इह गल करदे हैगे आ जिहड़ी भी अज इंग्लैंड दी यूके दी पॉलिटिक्स दे विच की कुछ हो रहा ते साडे ते उन्हां दा की इफैक्ट पैंदा, वो जिहियां गल्लां करदे हैं। सो अज फिर शो लैके आप दे सामने हाजिर होया। सो अज दे शो दे विच एक थोड़ी जी नवीं गल है, वो ये गल है कि साडी सिखां दी जिहड़ी नुमाइंदगी है, रैप्रजेंटेशन है, वो किन्नी क है ते जिहदे विच असीं हमेशा तुहानूं पता है इस शो दे विच मैं तां इह कहंदा रहना कि सानूं पोलिटिकल एक्टिविटीज़ दे विच हिस्सा लैना चाहिदा। सो असीं हिस्सा लैने कि नहीं लैने, मेरा ख्याल है उस चीज़ नूं अज उभारन दे लई एक नवी पार्टी सैटअप की गई है जिहदे विच साडे सिख नौजवान ते होर एथनिक माइनॉरिटी नाल लैके उन्होंने पोलिटिकल पार्टी सैटअप की है कि साडी आवाज़ जिहड़ी है वो क्यों नहीं पहुँच रही। सो अज इस टॉपिक दे उत्ते गल कर रहे हैं। इस टॉपिक ते गल करन दे लई स्टूडियो दे विच हाज़र होए ने मेरे को परे सिरे ते बैठे ने उपकार सिंह जी। वेलकम टू द सिख चैनल।
वेलकम।
And next to him is Graham Williamson. Welcome to the Sikh channel.
Thank you.
And next to me is Jagdish Singh, who you have seen on the Sikh channel before. Welcome, Jagdish ji. So let's start. I think what your party is set up to do something. In the last few weeks, we've had, I think the issue, big issue was in 1984, beyond, where Indira Gandhi, then the Prime Minister, wrote to Mrs. Thatcher, the Prime Minister of UK. Disclosure of those letters came after 30 years. And I think there's a lot of discussion has gone on about that. Where do we now go from here, or what did that actually mean to the British Sikhs in those letters? Upkar.
Let me just start by saying one thing. I was personally present in every meeting that's been conducted with the government on this, whether it was Jeremy Hayward or Baroness Warsi. And I was quite proud of the moment when, with Baroness Warsi, the whole community for once came together under one banner. Mm-hmm. And we spoke successfully with one ambition of putting our key points across.
Right.
And we did that successfully, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, what's happened, it has fallen on deaf ears. Baroness Warsi's and 10 Downing Street's letter last week to the community was a complete whitewash. Mm. It was patronizing, insulting, and all the other words you can put in a politician's letter when he actually doesn't care. Mm. He doesn't want to hear you out. He doesn't want to give you something because you are the electorate and you're asking for something.
Right.
Now, in 30 years, we've been knocking on that door, and it's been falling on silent ears. Today, they've been exposed for what they've done, be it very minimal involvement, as they put it. Hmm. But you know what? Give it time. They will be fully exposed by their own actions.
Right.
Now, that letter was very clear. You're not going to get another parliamentary inquiry in this country.
Right.
And the major requirement from the Sikh community on that day was we need support on the international inquiry, United Nations-led international inquiry. There was complete silence on that.
Right.
So where do we go from here?
Okay, can I just ask Jagdish on that? Because of these letters, Jagdish, there was so much going on in the community, but for the past 30 years, the Indian government has not done a single thing. And here we are asking the British government, right, even in some quarters was asking the Prime Minister to apologize, right? Now, do you think that was right?
Yeah, well, when the whole business of 1984, the shocking genocidal actions of the Indian government of 1984, what has clearly now been established, and certainly to my mind, I was not shocked by it because I had already seen certain documents going back many decades. There were reports then, as there now are official reports now, top secret documents confirming that the British government certainly had a hand in the events of 1984. The British government can argue and recriminate and argue this way and that way. Our hand was limited to advice and blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, my neighbour has committed the murder of his wife. I've given him advice how to commit the murder, and I've given him advice how to dispose of the body. So I've aided and abetted the murder next door.
Right.
And this is what the British government has done. Now, it's not just confined to 1984. If you observe and analyse 1984 right through to 2014, we have a whole cycle of British government support for the Indian government. Did the British government speak up for Jaswant Singh Kalra? Did the British government speak up for Balbir Singh Bains? Did it speak up for Paramjit Singh Daddi? And so many other incidents that have happened in Punjab and outside of Punjab over the course of 1984.
Well, hang on a minute, because this is the government level. Would the British government know all these names or whatever they would do?
Indeed. These were represented to the British government by us and many other Sikh organisations. Margaret Thatcher actually attended Indira Gandhi's funeral, whilst in the background, in the very same city she was attending the funeral, Sikhs were being slaughtered en masse, i.e. the city of Delhi.
Right.
The British High Commissioner, as per secret files and so forth, knew that Sikhs were being burnt, killed, slaughtered in Delhi. Margaret Thatcher went along all gleefully, happily, ignoring the fact that just across the road over there, tens of thousands of Sikhs are literally being burned.
And if I can add to that, the BBC cameraman at the time, while Thatcher was giving a speech, he took the camera and spanned the skyline of the city of Delhi, and you could see fires everywhere.
Right. Graham,
Yes.
All this issue, right, you've just heard your colleagues saying
Yes.
there's not going to be any further inquiry, whether it's a national or international, whatever. Right, where do we leave this issue? Or do we leave it, or how far can we go with it?
Clearly, it cannot be left. My colleagues have been human rights campaigners for many years, as I have myself. And one of the areas I've been heavily working is the Tamil community.
Right.
As you know, there was a genocide in 2009, and they have just won a UN resolution to actually introduce an international inquiry into the genocide, or the alleged genocide and war crimes in Sri Lanka at that period.
Right.
We should be demanding that the British government supports a UN resolution to have an international inquiry into what happened in India. Let's be clear here, even with Rwanda, whilst no action was taken at the time to protect the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that were murdered, there have been investigations since. The problem you have with India is that because of the market of India that a British business wishes to trade with, they don't want to upset the Indian government. So the problem we have is our own government doesn't want to upset another government, despite obviously the human rights abuses that have taken place. And as a Briton, if you like, an outsider, not obviously part of the Sikh community, I nevertheless stand with the Sikh community to find justice.
Right.
And we need an investigation. I believe there will be ultimately an international investigation. I think it's a matter of how long it's going to take.
Right. Okay, let me move on. Simply, is your party, creating a new party, is it coming out of this or many other issues, right? Your party is the National Liberal Party, okay? That is, you've launched that already, and you're fielding candidates. Right. Many political parties have been set up in the past. As you probably know, there was a Respect Party, there was a Gang of Four, defected from Labour Party, SDP, and I think there was an Arthur Scargill. What makes your party unique where others have failed?
I'll tell you why we're unique. The first principle of a Sikh is Sarbat Bhala.
Okay.
We as a Sikh community have felt to raise our voice for other communities who are oppressed. For 30 years I've been watching the pattern of the way our community has worked, and we have felt to engage other communities and stand shoulder to shoulder with them, likewise, because in India there are many communities who have suffered the same way we have.
Right.
but we've not given them any support. And we've expected support, but unconditionally, and we've been pretty selfish with that.
Right.
Considering that out of the 10 gurus, 6 gurus did give their sacrifices directly or indirectly for the rights of other minorities in India at the time. There were huge sacrifices and set examples.
Right.
We have failed in the 500 years, well, the 400 years previous to the last 100 years, to give that support to the wider community. The first mission of a Sikh is to give that support. We thought we had failed, we needed to do something. So me, Jagdish Singh, Graham obviously, we've been working for many years. I'll give you an example. When the 2 Afghanis were beheaded, I went to all the organizations in this country and I said, look, this issue is very, very important. These people were tortured, their eyes were gouged out, their tongues were cut out. Then their heads were rolled at Joga Singh Gurdwara like a rolling pin with blood splattering all over the Sangat. Why can you not see the gravity of the situation? If we don't react today, what will happen? Complete silence from our own leadership.
Right.
I got a few people together, Amnesty International, the church, the head of the church, and we went there. We did a petition at 10 Downing Street and at Pakistan Embassy. We didn't do it on our own. One simple memorandum in 15 countries simultaneously created an effect.
Right.
It went back to Pakistan, and overnight they had a firefight over this issue. The 2 other Sikhs who were in custody, they escaped and they got away. That's just one example.
Right.
Now, we have been working with communities, and it's been years of work building relationships and confidence and trust with them.
Right.
It was time we brought everybody's message of self-determination. Whether you want Khalistan, whether you want the Anandpur Sahib Mata, or you stand for human rights, they all come under the banner of self-determination.
Right.
We are giving that to the Sangat finally. We're giving it to the wider community. If there are people who patronize you and say, oh, we only 0.7% as a community. Well, we're not.
No.
In the London election, there's 3.5 million people voting. Well, guess what these minorities represent? 600,000.
Right. Okay.
So we have a substantial vote and power to take our message to the government and say, one, we are not goats or sheep that can be led
Right.
blindly anywhere.
Okay.
Secondly, we are born leaders and we can vote and make a difference in this process.
Okay, Graham,
Yes.
why call it a Liberal Party? Because if a Liberal Party already became Liberal Democrats, why something, you already been used? Why didn't you create something new?
Well, the National Liberal Party has existed in the past in the UK, and the difference between, it's a different form of liberalism. It's a liberalism which accepts the identity of people. It's not saying that, this problem with Europe, and the Liberal Democrats say they're a party of Europe. They don't look at the tradition of Britain, whether it wants to remain independent. We accept the identity of people, we accept people's nationality and the wish to maintain it. But we're also liberal in how a government should be run. For instance, in our manifesto, which I think we have here, in the manifesto, whilst our primary policy is self-determination, we wish to see a UN referendum throughout the whole world for all peoples that are looking for identity issues. We also say as a secondary issue is the problem we have of religious minorities, the problem of caste discrimination in the UK, some of the baggage, if you like, that certain peoples have brought to the UK.
Right.
And we're saying that, that needs to be addressed like FGM, the problem of mutilation. We're saying that despite that being a cultural facet of certain communities, we say that that's not acceptable in a Western society. So it may seem like we're reinventing the wheel, but we're actually using an old philosophy that existed in the past.
But all the other parties,
Yes.
whoever they are,
Yes.
they're always going to take that message across to say, we can deliver this, we can do this, we can do that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you look at it, if Labour comes, Conservative comes, Liberal Democrat, you name it, or even UKIP, whoever comes in, you take that as false promises. Do you think that you can make that difference that they haven't?
I'll answer that. What makes us different is the first question, if you like. Well, what makes us different is that these candidates, the 8 candidates, because there's 8 MEPs in London, obviously all represent different communities, but effectively they're all 8 human rights activists. They're not politicians. They're not professional politicians.
Right.
It's not a job. In fact, it costs us money and time doing this.
Right.
So therefore we do it as a labour of love. We don't do it for our pocket. Most of the parties that are standing are all professional politicians who are paid to do that job. We're not. So we think that we're from the people. We have a history of campaigning for the people.
Right.
And we hope that the voters out there will see that we are just like them. It's just that we work very hard on these causes. So it's no different to us, if elected, to go to Brussels to represent these people in Brussels as we've tried to represent them in Britain.
Okay. Right. Jagdish,
Yeah.
Sikhs, from that point, a Sikh should be led or should be a leader, right? If they are leaders, why they're holding back? Why aren't they participating in the mainstream political parties? Or here you are launching a new party.
Yes, yes.
What? Why?
Well, it's a very good question, and I'm very glad you've asked it. There's faults on both ends of the spectrum, both at the Sikh end,
Right.
The Sikh community end, and equally at the political establishment end. And we both need to meet in the middle somewhere. The Sikhs, we have failed ourselves by confining ourselves to our own communities, an introverted lifestyle. We've progressed financially. Our parents came here, your generation, for example, and you're an exception because you came here and amongst all the battles of racism and discrimination you underwent, you maintained the Sikh visual identity, you battled against the racism, and you still maintained a living in this country. Many parents were too stuck in the labour of money making and didn't have time to devote to politics or didn't have the know-how. Today, generations like myself, second and third, there's a danger that our parents have made the sacrifices, they've built us the houses, we've become educated, they've bequeathed their properties to us. We've become too lazily comfortable in our lifestyles. We're earning decent money, we've got our BMW, we're sending our kids to school. Life is relatively easy and comfortable. We don't care. We're happy. The world around us doesn't matter. And I think that's a dangerous complacency, and it's very much unethically Sikh. It's un-Sikh-like, and we're ignoring the world around us. The world is passing us by. Our Gurdwaras, unfortunately, are not helping to mobilise the Sikh community to play a part in the national life of Britain. You can only play a part in the national life of Britain by getting involved in British issues. That means including coming to the front line of politics. Now myself and Upgard, with the great help of Graham, my colleague, and many other communities that have come together, we've all taken the very strong, unified approach that we, the communities of Britain, we, the communities of London, we need to unite and use our 600,000 votes together to assert our communities. Now, by standing as full-fledged practicing Amritdhari, Kesatari Sikhs, we hopefully will motivate other Sikhs out there who are keen, ready and willing to come forward into the active battle of politics. Hopefully we can do that. And at the same time, I've been in politics for previous decades. I was a Liberal Democrat candidate, for example, in Coventry and again in Slough. But one thing I noticed, that whilst they liked for me to stand for them, they never put me in a safe seat. They always placed me in a losing seat. Now I learnt a little message from that I'm good enough to be a frontline candidate, but I'm not good enough to be in one of your safe seats. And from that I learnt that even being a candidate for you and doing all the hard work for you, you still don't want me to be a winning candidate. And I felt an injustice there. And so far, we've got Sikh councillors, we've got Sikh MPs emerging through the ranks, but a lot of them, unfortunately, do not want to speak the Sikh voice, much less keep the Sikh identity, the Sikh visual identity. You commendably have, but others haven't. And I think we're doing ourselves, the British establishment needs to embrace this kind of Sikh around the table and give this kind of Sikh the voice, the opportunity to speak up authentically and robustly for the role of the Sikh community in Britain.
Following from that, you think then these political parties are just paying the lip service, right? And if you to stand and challenge, as Jagdish is saying, right, that challenge to them, is it a threat?
Of course it is. And it's a very direct threat. And I want it to be a threat, simply because we've not been listened to. Our voices have been falling on deaf ears. It's time the British establishment understood that we are taxpayers, we are as British as everybody else, and we have rights. We've got families who've suffered, and it's a fact. We've not just come over as immigrants. There's thousands here, well over 1.5, 150,000 people who've come over because they've been victims back home.
Right.
And you know, there's the first, second generation. I can show you people who've been tortured who live in this country, and they've been patronised. But what annoys me is the fact that the first generation who's coming through now have chosen to take the easy path, become goats, and follow the flow. Speak take the easier path.
Right.
You're forgetting your identity is the sacrifice of 500 years of Sikhs being leaders. And even as minorities in India, as 1%, we created some of the greatest sacrifices and you know, victories in history. And today, we are falling on our knees here simply because we do not want to question the system.
Don't you think it's a danger then that if you simply taking the Sikh philosophy and the Sikh message, are you then going to take the other communities with you? If you're just simply going to be taking, because you started with the initially disclosure of letter 84, now you're saying the Sikhs have not been listened to, Sikhs this, Sikhs that. Are you alienating yourself?
No, we're not. What we're saying is, and the name is very deliberate, it says National Liberal Party. We are very national, we are British. This is where we live, this is where we apply our wealth and give the taxes. I'm British first, but I also have my own identity. I also have issues as a Sikh. We need to bring all those forward, and all these minorities have the same issues. I'll give you. Let me just finish on that. You know, take Islam. Yeah, everybody's tainted with the same brush. They're all terrorists. Islamophobia is huge in this country. Yet there are communities who are very peaceful, but they're not being given a voice within Islam. And a very smart religious spiritual leader said to me, he said, the British government have tainted you as terrorists for the last 30 years. They've been speaking the Indian government's language. And Lord Indrajit, in fact, revealed this very clearly in front of all the ministers, barons and Wasi, why have we been targeted deliberately by the British establishment. And they didn't have a word to say. So you have to say something. Either you raise your own voice and you go inside the system and objectively put your voice across, or you become a submissive, alienated society who just are yes men. And Sikhs have never been yes men.
You want to add something?
Yeah, indeed. The Sikhs, if you look at the Sikhs, and this is not unduly banging on about the Sikhs, we wish we didn't need to, but the reality is, the harsh, solid reality is that even before Sikhs came to this country, the British took our country from us, independent Punjab, now in 1849. Now, Punjab and the Sikhs represented the backbone of the British global army. The Sikhs have been fighting, dying, both in the First and Second World War, but much beyond that, defending the British territories in the northwest frontier, in Afghanistan, in Burma, fighting Japan.
Boer Wars.
The Boer Wars. What is it that the Sikhs haven't given to Britain? We are, and I'm sorry to say, I'm not sorry to say if it sounds insulting, but it's not. I'm sorry to say we carry this burden, but we have received nothing back in return. That no single community in Britain has given so much over so much time and made so much sacrifice for Britain, but received so little back from Britain. We died not in a few thousand, we died in excess of 100,000 just fighting this 2 world wars for Britain, a war which was not of our making, a war which did not affect us in Punjab, a war that we engaged in to help the British, leaving our villages 5,000 miles away. We went right across the world to fight and die in the French trenches and the Belgian trenches. A war for which we still haven't got recognition even now in Britain. And even then, you are a living testimony, I'm living testimony, Upgar's living testimony. We come to this country, our parents are insulted, their turbans are knocked off. In schools in the 1970s, my Gutti is constantly pulled at, I'm called an applehead and all sorts, and then I'm brutally attacked post 9/11 in Coventry. What is it about our community that we haven't given to this country? Not only did our parents work so hard, vigorously hard, to fill the job gaps, contribute to the manufacturing industry of this country, our children have outperformed themselves in education. Our crime and disorder figures are so low, they're negligible. There's hardly any Sikh in the British prisons. We're the second highest homeowners in this country. We're amongst the top-ranking taxpayers in this country. What haven't we given to Britain?
Okay,
Because they're a model community.
Graham,
Yes.
let's move on about your party.
yes,
you
yes.
want to stand in the European Parliament, right?
Indeed, yes.
Are you in or out?
We basically believe in a referendum
Okay.
that the public must choose. In fact, we believe in bringing the Swiss model of politics. You let the people decide in general.
Right.
So,
you think this election in next month
yes.
will be like a referendum if people vote against the establishment or
Yes, it
established
will, be,
party?
Of course.
it will be a referendum for all those communities that feel they've been let down by Britain. If you look at one of these leaflets, you see there, I think, 20 flags. There's probably more than 30 flags of people who work with us.
Right.
Obviously, there's only 8 MEPs, so we can only select 8 candidates for different communities. All of them, like Sikhs, feel let down by Britain.
By the British government.
By the British government. Some of them, of course, were directly involved in the British Empire, so therefore it's a legacy of empire. Britain cut and run, but also there's other communities that have nothing to do with Britain, but they are living here, and they need a voice in the European Parliament.
Okay, if the referendum
Yes.
is, as the present coalition government is saying, you can have one in 2017 if, big if
Yes.
Cameron wins, right?
Yeah, big if,
Right?
yes.
Okay, if
you
the
trust it.
referendum said yes or no, all these jobs which are, if we are in Europe, if we come out, they'll all be lost. Massive unemployment again. What do we actually gain by coming out?
Well, we're not campaigning at this stage for in or out. I think there's obviously been lots of scare stories by the antis and the pros. I don't think, if you look at the history of countries that haven't gone into the EU, like Switzerland and Sweden and Norway, they've been quite successful. However, we believe that there should be a reformed Europe. We believe there should be a renegotiation. I think David Cameron made a massive mistake by not trying to renegotiate at this stage when the Eurozone is very weak. He's talking about 2017 for political advantage. Oh, re-elect me and I may give you a referendum. By that time, the Eurozone may be stronger, and then the negotiation will be harder. So we believe there should be a negotiation now to see if we can have a Europe which the British people will accept. And then you put that to a referendum.
Can I just want to add something to that question?
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
I find it quite patronising that he's won 2 elections, he's promised to give us the referendum, and he's failed. That's the difference between us and these parties that already exist.
Yes.
They failed to deliver again and again and again. And today's patronising to treat us like donkeys. Here's a carrot.
Yeah.
When I win, I will give you what you want. That's
Maybe.
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 We know that.
But Britain was at the time when they wanted to go into the common market, right? They were really trying so hard, and over the years, right, they wanted to go in, but they were not allowed, right? They were not allowed. Then when they go in, now all these parties want this referendum on simply because, oh, Europe is doing this to us. Oh, Europe is doing this to us. Don't you think it's just simply simpler by saying, okay, we'll stay in there, right? We will not be governed by Europe. Is that the big question you think it is? Or completely come out, we don't want to be nothing to do with Europe?
Look, let's be frank. There are many economic policies that are dictated by Europe. So what do we have our own government for?
Right.
Why are we even bothering to vote? So the people should be given a right to decide on that. People aren't stupid. People will start discussing, engaging at a very intellectual level, discussing the pros and cons of this when they're given the chance. But right now, we're in a position where it's a status quo from every government. It's only because they're under pressure and they're under the cost that they're actually giving you something, but it's under preconditions that you get us back in. That's not acceptable. Do not treat the people like election fodder. That's the key message.
For instance, now what is happening, you had this other party called UKIP, right? There's so many MPs got elected just on the banner by saying we should not be in Europe, right? They're there. They can obviously answer this question for themselves. But your party, you know, you are looking for a referendum, and that party probably dominate the voting this time, right? Because people, if they don't like to be in Europe, they probably vote for them, right? But those people are enjoying the gravy train.
They are, of course.
Yeah. Well, in Europe, without wishing to regurgitate what my comrades are saying, Europe is something that the people of Britain should be able to decide through informed discussion and dialogue. They must be able to decide through a referendum to what extent we want to be part of Europe and to what extent we want to be independent. Now, Europe doesn't mean either you're completely in or you're completely out. We can have a negotiated relationship with Europe, whereby we can have freedom of movement of trade and commerce, but without having the extra baggage of freedom of human movement, because we've seen that by having open borders, we've had not only the freedom of trade, but we've also had the reverse aspect of that, which is the freedom of movement of populations to a country like Britain, or a state like Britain, which simply does not have the physical capacity and resources to cater for such phenomenal numbers. We've become a magnet for the rest of Europe. That's simply not fair on Britain. So we want a relationship with Europe. We're not anti-Europe by any means, absolutely not. We want to have any nation in the world cannot afford to cut off itself from the rest of the countries around it. It needs to trade, it needs to exchange, it needs to have common defense programs, common cultural programs, common exchange. But certain things need to be kept within the domain and the independence of that country. For it to freely decide that, yes, we'll have X number of migration, or X number of trade, or X number of this, that, and the other. We're not at the whim and mercy of a centralised European power, which dictates to us what we must take and what we mustn't. Even our passports now are saying we're slipping away from being citizens of Britain, and we've become citizens of the European community. In another 10 years' time, we may completely lose the sense, are we English? Are we British? Oh, we're actually European, aren't we now? And there may even come a very severe time where we're all expected to either learn French or German, because that becomes the superimposed language of all of Europe. We don't want that.
Okay, I mean, the labels, Jagdish, always are, I mean, Asians in Britain, which includes us, the Muslims and everybody else. And when these guys are overseas, they're all called Europeans, not as English or French or whatever. So the labels are all over the place. Right, let me move on, Graham.
Yes.
Another one.
Yes.
Scotland.
Yes.
Referendum in Scotland.
Yes.
You think they should be independent?
I think that's for the Scots to choose. Basically, we have a problem in Britain. We have a union of Scotland and England and Wales and Northern Ireland. We've never decided what's the nature of that union. In other words, is it one nation called Britain, or is it in fact what it was originally, 4 nations? I believe it's 4 nations. I believe the English and the Scottish and the Welsh and the Northern Irish have their own distinct identity. They have cultural differences. They have, even in Scotland, legal differences. So it's absolutely right that the Scots should have that referendum to decide. Now, the problem you have with the union is because it's been forced on Westminster, because the Scots and the Welsh have forced them to give devolution, they've forgotten about poor old England. Because to have a proper, if you don't have one state, a unitary state, you have to have a federal state. And if you have a federal state, you give devolutionary powers to Scotland and Wales. But what about England? England needs a parliament. And you're all living in England, you're English. That's right. And you need a parliament too, because at the moment, Scottish MPs vote on English matters. But English MPs can't vote on Scottish matters. It's unfair and unbalanced. And if it's not sorted, eventually the union may break up, the English may walk away. So I don't think the Scots will probably vote yes. I'm very happy if they do vote yes. It's their decision. I'm not Scottish. It's absolutely right they have a referendum. We're great believers in referendums. We believe, as I say, with the Swiss, they must have as many referendums as it takes for the people to decide. All I would say is that I would campaign for the right of those people, or all of peoples, to make that choice. Whether they'll vote yes, I don't know. They may vote no. But if they vote no, the rumour is that they will be given what they call Devo Max, which is the maximum devolution you can give an area without actually being independent. And then you have England with absolutely nothing, not even recognised. So there is a problem looming, but we're happy that they've got a vote.
Upkar, there's so many Sikhs living in Scotland. If the vote is yes, they are then literally divorced from UK. A lot of relatives are over there between the two countries, Scotland and England, right? What will be the future for them?
Let's put that aside. What's our future then? Are we British? Are we English after that?
Right.
Let's be realistic. We have been put in a conundrum with this. And all I've seen from the current British government is they're bullying the Scottish into making a decision. Rather than embracing Scotland and saying, you are our brothers, we should stay together, these are the benefits. It's been quite the opposite.
Are they saying that?
Quite the opposite. Look at the language. Read the words.
Scaremongering.
It's scaremongering.
This will
It's
happen
bully
to you.
tactics.
Yeah.
And I've had that similar treatment for even our own Sikh, young Sikhs in this country who question why we're doing what we're doing. Let's face it. We are so assimilated into the system that they want yes men. And in Scotland, they're having the same treatment. They want them to just say yes, and there is no option of no, and there's no intellectual debate about this. And I have a lot of pride for the Scots. At least in Scotland, our Banda Singh Bahadur has been given this parallel status to Sir William Wallace. In Britain, we haven't even achieved. We haven't even achieved that in this country.
Scottish Parliament.
And we haven't even got the right to write Sikh on the British Sikh. I want to put British Sikh on the census. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the question on the census. We probably can cover it. On the same question,
Scotland. Scotland is a passion for me.
Yeah.
I have a strong relationship with the Scots. We've been involved in the William Wallace 700-year anniversary. Banda Singh Bahadur was recognised a few years ago by the Scottish Parliament as an equal to William Wallace. I wholeheartedly, and as a matter of principle, consistent with our campaign under the National Liberal Party banner, I would decidedly support Scottish independence. If I was living in Scotland, I would be waving the Scottish flag, pro-independence, and we will be writing, we will be writing to the Scottish Gurdwaras, Scottish Sikh Gurdwaras, Scottish Sikh community to support the yes vote in Scotland.
Would you then, after your campaign in European elections, which is only a few weeks away, after that, would you actually go into Scotland and do work under this ban?
Well, we're already planning that, and so we're already planning that. We're already mentally checking out the dates, where we should go, how we should go, and support the yes campaign. And the fact is, it's very simple. Scotland is one of those small nations, stateless nations in the world, who, like us, and like all these other nations represented on this leaflet, and more, it is part of the global struggle for national empowerment, to have their own taxation system, their own government, their own laws, their own parliament. And like Graham says perfectly correctly, England should have exactly the same. It's about equal rights, equal nations in a global world. And that's what we're fighting for Punjab, for Kashmir, for the Basques, wherever in the world, the Tamils.
Hang on a minute. On that issue, then, where we talking globalization, aren't we now literally splitting these little things, islands everywhere?
Let me explain further. You raised a very good question about, okay, if Scotland becomes independent, what will happen to the Sikhs on the northern side of the border and the Sikhs on the southern in England? Nothing will happen to them, because Scotland and England will be equal players, and they can speak to each other on equal terms to negotiate treaties. For example, the issue of a British passport is part of this topical discussion. Now, it's been raised by the current Scottish government, by the Scottish Minister Alex Salmond, who's a supporter of the Sikh nation, by the way. He said there's no need for existing British passports to be stripped away from Scots, much less from the English, so that even when we become independent, if we become independent, there can still be freedom of movement. You've got Northern Ireland at the moment, and the border with Main Island, that border is quite open. You can go into Northern Ireland, and you don't need a visa to go into Ireland. You can go up and down with a British passport. Now, Scotland will remain part of Europe, as will England, of course, at the time, and we will have that freedom of movement. But even put aside all of Europe, put aside all the other stuff, Scotland and England can very amicably, and this is the nature of nations speaking to each other on an equal level. Scotland and England will be able to respect each other as equals, and government to government, people to people, we can negotiate cultural movement, geographical movement up and down, and trade and so forth. That's not going to stop. Trade is not going to stop. I'm not going to suddenly stop going to Stirling and the Highlands for my holidays and whatnot. I'll happily and gleefully go. And if Mr. Cameron says Jagdish is a dangerous person in England, I'll run to Scotland for political asylum. So, you know, Scotland will always just be down the road for me.
Well said.
Well said, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
But one of your leaflets here is saying these oppressed nations,
Yes.
right? The peoples of these, like the Ukraine now, then you got all sorts of other, you had Kurdish problem before.
Yes.
If these big parties, these big governments have failed,
Yes.
how your party, which is just launched, can make the difference? Anybody?
We represent a small David versus Goliath phenomena. You're familiar with David, a small person, against this huge giant of a force, and yet David knocks the giant down and wins. We represent the beginning of a long journey. There's a Chinese saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first few steps. We can, with time and with effort, can change the political agenda completely 360 degrees. By coming on, being successful in this election, in this European election, we will send out a torpedo to the likes of David Cameron and Nick Clegg and the other heads of the various political parties.
Ed
Miliband, that we are a force to be reckoned with. These nations need to be recognised. These nations have now banded together because you failed them, and they are now electing different representatives. And those representatives not only will speak for them, but they will raise a huge cry, a loud shout for them in the European Parliament, and in turn in the UK Parliament. So the momentum will begin to shift. It will turn around, and the mainstream forces, political forces, will have to begin to respond to this agenda. They won't necessarily respond immediately, and they won't necessarily respond immediately favourably, but they will have to respond, just as we've now seen with the 1984 revelations. Where was David Miliband for the last 5-6 years? Or the Labour leadership for the last 30 years? Where was the Tory leadership? And quite profoundly, ironically, the Liberal Democrat leadership have just gone into complete hibernation on the issue of Sikhs.
Right, and let me remind you, hundreds of years of British policy have created these nations.
Yes.
They're not here because they wanted to come here. They came here because we destroyed the land they lived on and the freedom they had. So British policy has already created them, but we refuse to now acknowledge what their requirements are, what their needs are. So we need to change that.
Right, gentlemen, as always, time doesn't wait for anybody. Thanks for coming in. Finally, Upkar, right, in the last 30 seconds, what message you want to give? And the Sikh channel has started this political program. What do you think?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Sikh channel. They've been, their performance is commendable. Over the years, today we're celebrating the 5th anniversary of the Sikh channel. And, you know, congratulations to you. And may you keep flourishing, because you are the Panth's voice across Europe, Canada, America. You're far-reaching. And who knows, tomorrow it might be India. So we're with you. We are well-wishers for anything that sends out our message. For the community, it's a very direct message. We need to stop becoming assimilated. We need to stop questioning what our identity is. Yes, we are British. That's why we are the National Liberal Party. We are still going to engage with this government. We're not going to slam the doors shut on it. They're going to have to face us face to face. We will vote. We will come in there. We will challenge you. But it's your voice, and your vote. Get it across. On the 22nd of May, get out there, put the cross on the National Liberal Party's self-determination for all. That's the key message.
Graham?
I would echo what Upgar says. We need every Sikh vote, we need every Tamil vote, West Papuan, all those communities that feel they're voiceless at the moment. If you vote, if you live in London and you vote National Liberal Party, self-determination for all, we can win and we can send a team to Europe and we start looking after your interests.
Jagdish?
Vote National Liberal Democrats. You are voting for yourself, voting for your representation, vote for self-determination, 22nd of May 2014.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and giving us your views and launching the new party. I wish you every success.
Thank you.
So we'll probably speak to you again, and I going to try and get a program together with all the parties.
That would be
then
best.
hopefully you can come and represent.
Yeah.
So ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀਓ, ਇਹ ਸਨ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟੇਟਿਵ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਊ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਤਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਵੌਇਸ, ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਇੰਗੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੱਕ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਇਸਤੇਮਾਲ ਕਰੋ। ਇਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਸਿੱਖਸ ਐਂਡ ਪੋਲੀਟਿਕਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਕਰ ਗਏ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ। ਇਹ ਜੋ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਦੀ ਵਿਊਜ਼ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹਨ, ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਲਿਆ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਊ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਹਨ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਦੇਖਣ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਹੈ। ਫਿਰ ਅਗਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਆਓ ਵਿਦਾਇਗੀ ਦੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਓ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।